Hey, this is Glenn Livingston, and I'm here with one of my good friends, Howie Jacobson. How are you, Howie?
Wonderful, Glenn. How about you?
Are you really wonderful?
I really am wonderful.
I heard that about you.
I would not bullshit your listeners.
Thank you.
We'll do another call and I'll tell you I'm crappy and then they'll know I'm telling the truth now.
You've got a lot of people calling you to see if you need a free coaching session after that. The reason I wanted to talk to Howie today was because Howie is someone who has done a lot of soul searching, kind of spending a lot of time crafting the life that he wants. He does a good deal of mostly business coaching, right, Howie, on the coaching side?
Yeah, it all starts as business. Let's put it that way.
That's an interesting comment in and of itself. There's almost no type of coaching that doesn't become personal coaching on some level, right?
Right, we're the limiting factor. The things that are our limiting factors, it could be, our business model, our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our physical health. Part of the job of the coach is to kind of figure out where there's a good inflection point. So I have clients for whom they want to talk about marketing and the conversation naturally moves to what did you eat for breakfast? Because that's actually more important.
Because the reason they're not succeeding in their business is because they're not feeding their body correctly, and it's difficult to think when you don't feed your body correctly, right?
Yeah, it's like coaching someone to win a NASCAR race and there's no fuel in their tank.
Right.
You can spend all the time you want watching the videos of your competitors. Get some fuel in your tank.
There you go. So Howie's also the author of a couple of well-known books, AdWords for Dummies, and actually a book that's about to come out, which is called Whole. Co-author is T. Colin Campbell from the China Study. And Howie, I find that very impressive. I don't know if you find that very impressive, but I find it impressive.
I still find it impressive.
Good.
I used to find the AdWords book impressive, and then I didn't anymore. But I'm still at the pinch myself that I got to write a book with Colin Campbell.
Yeah, you definitely deserve it. You definitely deserve it. And it is impressive. You should. What I really wanted to ask you about today was there was a time when you really weren't comfortable taking money for coaching. There was a time when you hadn't had any coaching clients, when maybe you had a bunch of insecurities and ambivalences about what it might be like to coach professionally. And I'm wondering if you can kind of take me back to the time, talk a little bit about those insecurities, and then we can take the journey together and understand what your first client experiences were like and how you got over some of those insecurities. Would that be okay?
Sure. I can think of very specific structural issues that got in my way at first. And one of them I think is probably common to most people, which is that we end up being drawn to helping other people with our own problems. If I want to be a communications coach, it's because that's where I struggle. Regardless of the time and experience that I've had getting good at it, that it's kind of an inherent area of weakness. I became a marketing coach because I found marketing so painful when I was starting out that I had to sort of learn a whole bunch of stuff to overcome it. So that what comes easily to us tends to be stuff we don't coach on because we don't think it's such a big deal. If we can do it, we assume everyone can do it. It's the stuff that we struggle with that we end up learning well enough to help others. And yet, structurally, the fact that we struggle at it, at least for me, meant that I had a lot of doubts over whether I really could help anyone else.
Right. So I guess another way of saying that is that if you put yourself in the position of being the person responsible for teaching something, there's almost no better way to master a topic than to be forced to teach it. There's also almost no better way to give yourself a heart attack.
So none of us is perfect, with the exception of Sharon, if she's listening to this, but there's still areas where I struggle. And there's a feeling that can come up for me of, like, sometimes I'm coaching to the book. Like, it's not my stuff. It's not really fully in me on a cellular level. But here's a book that has a technique that I know that they could benefit from, so I'm going to teach them that. And sometimes it feels like it's an out-of-body experience. I really don't have the right. Something like that. That used to come up a lot for me, that I'd be sharing some really, really useful technique that I'd read. And maybe I wasn't doing it fully myself, or I wasn't doing it at all, but I'm a teacher, so I could teach them that. And then I'd feel like, oh, God, I'm such a fraud. It's not even my own thing.
How did you evolve from there?
One thing that was very helpful was realizing that not everybody reads the books I read. So there's a certain value to the fact that I devour books, and it's like the librarian didn't write any of the books, but a good librarian can get you the right book. And I started to see that there is value in just that, in being able to point. I was listening to a really interesting interview with a guy whose name I can't remember, who's a poet laureate of something or other, and he was talking about that plagiarism is the new art, that being able to point to things is more important than creating things. And he pointed out, like, Boing Boing blog. Says all they do is point at interesting things, and boing boing is arguably more significant than any of the things they point at. We live in a world in which curation is at least as important as content creation, because there's so much stuff out there.
Remember the old Abraham Lincoln quote about that?
No.
Abraham Lincoln said that it was not necessary to be an inventor of ideas. It was enough to be a retailer of ideas. And he actually considered himself more of a retailer of ideas than an inventor of ideas.
Ah, I like that.
Well, I didn't invent that. I'm just relating it. So you began to realize that there was value in pointing, being a retailer of ideas.
Well, not just a retailer, but a tailor of ideas. That I was good at seeing where someone else had solved the problem, that story could be beneficial. Before I got into business, one of the things I did to make a living was storytelling. Some folk tales, traditional stories, but I also was writing a lot of my own and telling stories. And I discovered that stories, well told, have a huge potential for healing. I can't really explain it, and there's people who've written about it in very deep ways, but I do know that telling the right story to the right person can make them feel relief, can make them feel hope, can make them feel energy. Who cares where the story came from? I've been reading a lot of weird stuff lately. I was reading about someone who does channeling, channeling spirit, disembodied spirit voices, and they were basically saying that everybody channels. Like, that's all we are. You may think that you're original. No one ever chose an idea. They either come to us or they don't. And that we're all basically channels for spirit of some kind. So that was the other thing, was realizing what was and what wasn't my responsibility as a coach. I felt like I had to be brilliant. Like every minute I had to be totally brilliant. And the truth is, all I had to be was present.
Right.
And that was actually harder than being brilliant. I find it rather easy to sort of dazzle people with my erudition. I find it very hard to not check my email when they're talking to me.
I think that's a good point, because there are a lot of feelings that come up when you put yourself in the position of creating an environment. D.W. Winnicott used to call this a holding environment, where you made it possible for a short period of time for people to be completely safe to say whatever they needed to say in words, to feel whatever they needed to feel. And the reason that can become very difficult to be present for is because you're going to have those feelings along with them. Feelings are kind of contagious. And all the reasons that they've been screwing up their life by hiding from those feelings and thoughts that they don't really want to have, when you create that environment and make it possible for them to have them, you're going to feel it also. And you're going to want to get away from it just like them. It's actually part of what I think is one of the hardest and also most significantly influential parts of coaching. Because most people in their lives respond with the same reflexive fear or compulsive talking or some type of behavioral emphasis, and they can't allow themselves to just be present. And so when you can teach yourself to do that for someone, you become different than everybody else in their life. You become an experience that they can't get anywhere else. So it's incredibly powerful and also in some ways incredibly difficult, which is why I always say, a lot of my competitors talk about, well, in coaching, you don't have to have the answers, you just have the questions. And well, yeah, that's true. You don't have to have the answers and you don't have to perform. But it's not really accurate to say you just have to have the questions. You have to have the presence of being and the fortitude to see that through so that they can sit with their reactions to those questions and think new thoughts and come to new solutions that they never would have come to without that thinking intervention. And so I think what you're kind of casually describing is really a very deep and profound journey that every coach needs to take. I'd be curious to know more about how that evolved for you.
I'm really a little breathless with the way you just described it, because so many things have just fallen into place for me. So I really appreciate the articulation you just gave. When you started talking, I pulled off a book from my shelf called Flawless Consulting by Peter Block. And the main thing I remember from this long book, which I read many years ago and somehow it has escaped all my purges, is that your body is your only instrument. As a coach, as a consultant, as anything, so that the ability to feel those feelings with people and not have to push them away or get distracted or talk over them, actually those feelings that come up in us when we get to know them and become sensitive to them are actually our best guides towards what's going on in our client, because we are resonating with whatever's up for them. So I find myself getting anxious about something. I used to dismiss it. Now I speak it. I'm feeling some anxiety around this. How is it for you? Or I'm really curious about this. I'm not using my cognitive, clever brain to solve their problems. I'm using a type of empathy that trusts my own body, my own intuition as a compass. And I guess when you say, what's my journey to that, it's been doing a hell of a lot of personal work. To be able to sit with unpleasant feelings is not something that came naturally to me. I don't know too many people to whom it does. But to do the kind of work where I was forced to face situations, criticisms, relational difficulties, and not die. Like
Right.
my assumption is I will do anything to avoid that type of conversation, because if I have it, I will be annihilated. I cannot survive that. And as ridiculous as it sounds, that was my working philosophy for years and years. So I think the ability to coach is really the ability to realize that feelings aren't going to kill you.
Right. I'm really interested in talking about the rewards of that and why do you still find it valuable to coach. And I think you're actually going deeper into coaching. I just wanted to mention something, and this is a little bit more about the deep psychology of coaching. And sometimes my coaching students say, well, I'm not a psychologist. I don't really need to know about that. And that's almost like saying, well, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't really need to know about thinking or how people behave or anything like that. You're never going to be responsible for treating people. You're never going to be responsible for diagnosing, curing, anything like that. We're not going to get into that. But it's good that you know something about what Howard just said, because those feelings like, if we talk about this, I'm not going to survive, those are the deepest, most troublesome feelings that people have. At core, the feeling that if we talk about this, I'm not going to survive, that's what causes people to make a mess out of their life. That's what causes them to race into action, and it's why you see smart people doing stupid things. It's because there's something that they feel like if they talked about it, they won't survive. And in coaching, if you can give the experience of making it possible to talk about it, well, they'll know that not only do they survive, but they thrive. Maybe that's a good transition, Howard, to talk about some clients that you had success with or that you were particularly satisfied in working with.
I realize how little I talk about this, actually. It's sort of an invitation to market, and I'm coming up a little blank. So I'm trying to think of what are the aspects of the relationship or of the outcomes that are just amazing.
Who was the first client that you had? Don't give me their names or their identified details, of course, but who was the first client you had that you felt like you did a good job with?
That's kind of a curve. There's people like I started feeling like I was earning my money. I didn't feel bad about taking their money, which I guess was an early sign of some success. Here's a group that I found that as I grew into myself that I was very helpful with was entrepreneurs who had started a business, were simply just not taking the time to be fully themselves. So they were like always in the on switch. As a result of that, they just didn't have the ability to see the big picture. And very often the big picture wasn't even that big. This became a really powerful question for me when people were in circumstances that they felt trapped in, but I could see clearly that they had created and that they could change. I'd say, if you had to start over, would you hire the same person, for example? If you had to start over, would you create this product line? If you had to start over, whatever the thing was. And the power of that question was that it reminded them that they always do have the power to start over. We tend to get over-invested in what we've already invested in. I would say the main thing is giving people a perspective of freedom, that there's space in which things can happen, space open for possibility. And that's true of freedom from the agony of these feelings that we're running from. So one thing I often do is be very transparent and very open in my vulnerability. When people see someone that vulnerable, they can put their own defenses down for a bit. And freedom in terms of we really are responsible. We are creators of our experience. And I don't know if that's universally true of everyone, but it's true of the people that I coach.
I think it's universally true that people have astoundingly more ability to become the masters of their own destiny than they would like to believe that they have on a day-to-day basis. And going through some of the experiences we talked about today, where you create the holding environment and you learn how to be present despite the feelings you might have, that's part of what frees people up to recognize that their limitations are self-imposed. So I think that's very relevant and very universal, in my opinion.
I started out coaching people just on growing their business. So I was like the marketing coach. And it quickly became apparent to me that I could give them lots of good ideas about their marketing, but they weren't going to do them, or they weren't doing them. And so I started getting curious about what was getting in the way, because we were having the same conversations every week. Oh, yeah, I got to do this. Yeah, I didn't really understand how to write that. Yeah, I heard your words. I listened to the recording, but I still couldn't get my head around it. It was all about various self-imposed limitations. I'm not a writer. I had a bad experience in 10th grade. So in that case, you have to show people that they are articulate. Where in your life have you done this already? If it's a time management issue, we need to be able to help them at least see. I'm a big believer in just a few different philosophies, and one of my favorites is appreciative inquiry, where we don't figure out how to fix what's wrong by focusing on what's wrong. We figure out how to fix what's wrong by focusing on what's right and modeling it. If you're looking at what's wrong, you're just moving away, and you can move away in 360 degrees. But you can only move to the right, to the correct, in one direction.
You reminded me as we're closing of one of the best definitions of art that I ever heard, which is life as it could or should be. And then when I heard that, I kind of instantly drew a line in my head between a lot of things that masquerade in the name of art, like dousing a cross in a jar of urine or something like that. That's expression. I don't know that it really does anything positive for the world. And I think that our focus in coaching is really on life as it could or should be. That's what you're describing with the concept of appreciative inquiry is, hey, let's focus on what could or should be and less on everything that's wrong.
Yeah, I hadn't really connected those dots either, but I view my clients as artists. View all of us as artists. My spiritual take on the world is that we're all here for a reason. We all have gifts, and woe to us who doesn't express our gifts. It'll kill us and it'll impoverish the world. Partly, entrepreneurs start out trying to build a cathedral, and then after a couple of years, they're just squaring stones. They just need some reminding that they're building a cathedral.
I love that. So Howie, if anybody that's listening kind of felt moved to get a coaching session with you, is there a way that they can work that out?
Yeah, they should just send me an email, howie@askhowie.com.
Okay, and you'll take it from there?
I have a whole website and askhowie.com, but it needs some snow plowing, so it's just easier to send me an email rather than trying to give you directions to Tuesday.
If you kind of look for Howie's website, you're going to get caught up in the entrepreneurial side of what he does, which is equally as valuable, by the way. I know Howie for a long time. He's actually a very good friend and colleague, and we have a lot of similarities in our backgrounds. I can definitely endorse that. So Howie, thanks again. Would you be willing to do this again?
Sure, anytime.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
In just 12 weeks, you can become a certified professional coach, confident in your ability and fully equipped to grow a thriving practice from anywhere or your money back. My name is Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about taking your coaching dreams a lot more seriously, about getting the right certification and training, and about developing the confidence to deliver stellar results time after time so your clients will accomplish their goals, others will notice, and get referred back to you. I'll hope you forgive my modesty while we talk, because my wife and I have more combined experience in both coaching and business development than virtually any other program on the market. I've personally worked with over 1,000 clients and supervised dozens of coaches and therapists, sharing some literally thousands of groups and team-building workshops. And together we've sold more than $20 million in consulting. We've had our previous work, research, and theories covered in major media like the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, ABC and CBS Radio, the Wall Street Journal, New York Daily News, and many more. So we have the confidence in our ability to train and certify you as a coach and give you the know-how to build the practice of your dreams. In fact, we're so confident, we're willing to guarantee it right through the end of the very last class. If you don't feel our training was your best choice for any reason, just show us you attended at least 3/4 of the classes and did at least 75% of the assignments. We will refund every penny that you paid. When you compare our experience, guarantee, and more affordable than most pricing, we think your choice will be clear. But if you're like most coaches, you're probably a little skeptical, maybe a lot. You see a lot of limitations and obstacles, and I'd like to talk about them with you because most of them are self-imposed. For example, you might think it's not really possible to earn a living as a professional coach. Maybe you think there's too much competition. But did you know that as of this recording, there were only about 20,000 active coaches in North America? That's less than one coach for every 15,000 people. Of course, not every one of those 15,000 people is in the market for a coach, but coaching has become ever more acceptable and interesting thanks to reality shows like The Biggest Loser, The Voice, dancing shows, singing shows, et cetera, et cetera. Every one of the contestants gets a coach, and the audience gets to see the value firsthand as they progress. More importantly, most coaches ignore the immense value of niching. There's literally hundreds of coaching niches to choose from, and when you do niche, you dramatically lower your competition and raise your odds of success. For example, where there may be 20,000 active coaches overall in North America, how many adoption coaches do you think there are? What about coaches who specialize in chocolate addiction? By the way, I could use one of those. Family business, academic achievement, and you don't have to marry any of these niches either. You just try one on size, learn the skills, and transfer them to whatever suits your fancy later on. But here's another self-imposed limitation. Many people think it's simply not possible to earn a living as a coach.
Well, you can visit becomearealcoach.com
to see detailed studies which suggest the average active coach earns about $55,000 per year. Of course, there are coaches who make a lot more and coaches who make a lot less. And it would be unreasonable to assume just getting certified will automatically give you this income. Your income as a coach will depend upon many things, including the niche you choose. For example, working with affluent couples to help them adopt is likely to be more lucrative than helping disabled veterans adjust to life at home. Not any more meaningful, fulfilling, or soulful, but definitely more profitable. The environment you work in will also influence your income. Private practice versus a salaried employee, etc. The number of hours you choose to fill. Nobody says you have to work full time. The fees that you're comfortable charging. There's a lot of coaches out there that don't want to charge as much as they really could charge. The business model that you choose, in other words, individual coaching versus selling books, tapes, seminars, groups, and events for more leveraged and passive income. The seriousness of the problem that you specialize in. How desperate are your clients to solve it? How meaningful and valuable is the solution? For example, it's easier to earn more as an adoption coach than a yoga coach for this very reason. And your income also depends upon how much effort you put into attracting clients. But most importantly, in our experience, your income is related to your coaching confidence and ability to produce stellar results for your clients. Or maybe the obstacle stopping you from taking your coaching dreams to the next level is wondering whether you need a professional background in therapy or counseling. But you don't, because coaching isn't therapy. So you won't get involved in diagnosing, treating, or curing any type of mental illness. And we'll teach you how to clearly draw the line and skillfully refer clients who require a licensed professional. When in doubt, refer it out is our motto. Coincidentally, many of these professionals who you refer to can become a good resource of referrals back into your network. Maybe you're not sure if you're worthy of coaching. Maybe you think you don't have enough experience, or you're just not credible enough to coach people professionally, or that you don't have the expertise. When people tell me this, I tell them that they're asking the wrong question. You see, if you're willing to put your heart and soul into helping someone, if you're willing to give them your undivided attention on a regular or semi-regular basis until they reach their goal, if you're willing to make them a priority in your life in exchange for a reasonable payment, then the real question is, you should be asking, are these clients worthy of me? Because you see, you've only got a limited amount of time, energy, and love to give these people, so you've got to protect your practice. The real question is, are they worthy of you? Maybe you don't think you have the time to become a certified professional coach, but if you can make 4 or 5 hours a week, which is under an hour a day, for just a few months, you can definitely become a certified professional coach in our program. And there are many, many ways to start a coaching practice on a part-time schedule. We know most coaches have very busy lives even before they begin. And because we actually like coaches who are out there living real lives, we work hard to accommodate them. Coaching is more about experience and the desire to share and spare than it is about book knowledge. Maybe you think you can't afford it. But our program is much more affordable than most other live interactive certification programs, and we've got financing options to suit any budget. Besides, coaching is one of the least expensive businesses to start because you can work with people all over the world via telephone, Skype, and the internet. So there's really no need for office space, rent, or other overhead. And we'll show you how to make a safe transition plan so you can carefully plan your move from another job with a great deal of confidence when the time is right. Because you are the product, this is another reason why coaching is easier to get into and less expensive, because you are the product, many of the traditional costs associated with starting a business like inventory or research and development, production cost, they just simply disappear. So, at the risk of appearing self-serving, a better question than, can you really afford to do this is, can you really afford not to do it? Finally, perhaps you think you're going to be a great coach, but you're too allergic to marketing to do anything about it. And if you feel this way, it's likely because you've been taught the wrong things about marketing. You're probably thinking of used car salesmen, cold calling, constant rejection, and constant lies. And nobody's taking the time to find out what marketing methods really suit your personality. Remember, Sharon and I have more combined experience in both coaching and business development than virtually any other certification program on the market. That means we've got the flexibility to help virtually any coach who wants it bad enough. You can check out our website at becomearealcoach.com for more details about our personal biographies. But for now, just trust me when I say if you don't like public speaking, there's no problem. If you hate making cold calls, there's no problem. If you can't even stand the idea of making a website, there's no problem because we'll show you how to market in a way that's comfortable for you. Now, by this point, you may actually be wondering what happens in the certification program itself. Again, you can visit becomearealcoach.com to read the details, but in a nutshell, our program is largely about the experience of being a coach and not the academic. Each week, you'll meet live with your instructor and your peers and have the experience of practicing that week's coaching or business development lesson with everybody in the group. You'll get detailed feedback from your master coach instructor, and you'll get additional feedback from your peers. And here's an important benefit most people don't think of. You'll get a chance to observe and learn from the other coaches in training. Then, after each event, you'll download a brief set of materials which prepare you for the following week and include an action challenge. So in short, First, you practice with your peers. Then you watch, read, or listen to us describe what you just experienced. And finally, you do it on your own outside of class so you can integrate the learning. Practice, study, then do. It's really that simple in less than an hour a day. There's quite a bit more to know.
So you'll want to visit becomearealcoach.com as soon as you can.
But the most important thing to remember is that in just 12 weeks, you really can become a certified professional coach, confident in your ability, and fully equipped to grow a thriving practice from anywhere or your money back. Head on over to becomearealcoach.com now. Classes fill quickly, so please book your slot today if you're at all interested. Thanks.